An experiment is a chain of actions which can be repeated under identical circumstances. That is what is called an experiment. Like tossing a coin, throwing a die, mixing hydrogen and oxygen under that electric spark, uh, doing any other, say say throwing a delivery, I mean, by a bowler, cricket ball in the cricket field. So these are all random experiments. No, sorry, experiments. Experiments are a chain of actions which can be repeated as many number of times we wish under identical situations. Now, what do we mean by identical situations? This is uh, this is uh, I mean, this means um, situations like, say, for tossing a coin, the identical situation would be to keep the same coin. Nothing else is mandatory for that thing. So you may do that in winter, you may do that the same coin, toss the same coin in summer, you may toss the same coin in the Africa, you can toss the same coin in the Alaska. Nothing will change, nothing else will change, only you need to keep the same coin. So that same coin, keeping the same coin, is the identical environment. Bowling in a cricket field, the identical situation contains many other things. Like bowling in a English pitch will be completely different from bowling in an Indian pitch, summer Indian pitch. So there bowling would be maybe with the same person, and with the ball manufactured by the same company. Maybe these two are the these things. Mm. We need to keep intact. Also, yeah, the pitch conditions and all these things. So there, the identical condition is many other things. Next, what we have is the experiment of hydrogen and oxygen, and at the lab. Their identical condition is very much specifically mentioned in the lab handbook over there. So an experiment is a chain of reactions which can be repeated under identical situations. So if we have all these identical situations defined for for every experiment, then we can repeat those chain of actions which consists an experiment. Now, experiments are of two types. Number one is deterministic. Number two is random. Deterministic experiment is that experiment in the chemical laboratory, mixing hydrogen and oxygen with the spark of electricity, because we know the result of the experiment beforehand. Every experiment should produce a result. Tossing a coin gives you a result, that is called outcome. Um, Throwing a bowling a delivery gives you an outcome, maybe a boundary, maybe a caught behind, maybe a bold, and all these things. Mixing hydrogen and oxygen inside the laboratory under electric spark gives you water. So these are the outcomes of experiments. Now, we know, for those experiments, if we know the outcomes, then we call them deterministic experiments. The other kind of experiments are random experiments. Random experiments are tossing a coin, throwing a die, um, bowling bowling a delivery. Those are random experiments where we do not know the outcome beforehand. Okay, so that is, these are random experiments. Now, uh, so you choose a random experiment, and we learned the other day that random experiment, if you do it once, then there is no chance of probability, no chance of anything we know that to be happen, that to happen. So I mean, anything we expect, like a say a biased coin in the pocket of a gambler. So the gambler knows that this coin gives you the head, say, zero point 0.8 probability. So that means 80% times it gets it gives you head. Now if you do it only once, then it does not give you it that does not give you results according to your conclusion, that probability. You need to do it quite a many number of times. So for that you need to perform a particular random experiment a number of times. That is called a trial. Okay, so a trial means a chain of random experiments, and yeah, trial is a chain of random experiments. Say my trial is to toss a coin twice. That is a trial. Now if I perform that trial 5 times, then I'll be tossing the coin 10 times. All right, we can also call the trial tossing a coin once, and we can say we have got 10 trials, so that is the same 10 tossing of the same coin. Now you might be thinking that why this trial terminology is coming. This trial terminology is sort of a general terminology. I mean, this series of random experiments, the whatever we need to make our one observation proper, that is called one trial. Um, let's uh, um, say we design it this way. We throw a die, and if it is odd, say we throw a die, yeah, if it is odd, then now let me design. I'm trying to design the experiment right away. um, we throw a die and toss a coin together. If it is if it is um, even and head together, then you will win, otherwise I will win. So if this is your game, then um, your trial is tossing a die and throwing a die and tossing a coin together. That is your one trial. Okay, so one trial is a series of random experiments, and then you keep on repeating that trial. Clear? Okay, any questions? Okay, so uh, next what we have is um, so we have got random yes, yes, yeah, even and head, let's say. Yeah, yeah, of course, of course, of course. Yes, of course. Not half, not half. Definitely not. Hmm. Okay. Are you taking notes? But I am recording this and I'll be uploading this to YouTube. Hmm. I mean, I'm doing this, so now your choice. Whether you take notes or not, that is your choice. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So now we have got trials. Now we have got a series of trials that is called a Bernoulli trial. Mm, Bernoulli trial কোথায় গেল? Uh, okay. Now a random experiment with only two possible outcomes is called a Bernoulli random experiment. Like tossing a coin, like state of a switch on or off. So these are called Bernoulli trials. Say your students uh, success or failure in an examination. It cannot be in the middle, either success or failure. So if a random experiment has got only two possible outcomes, one is called success. If it is two possible outcomes, one is called success, the other is called failure. As simple as that. So so then it is called a Bernoulli random experiment. A Bernoulli random experiment is then the associated trial is called a Bernoulli trial. Okay, a random experiment which is, I mean, a trial which is related to a associated with a Bernoulli random experiment, that is called a Bernoulli trial. So that has only got two outcomes possible: success and failure, like head or tail, state of a switch or something, things like that. Next, we have got something called sample space. Sample space is the collection of all possible outcomes after a series of trials. Okay, a series of trials, that is a sample space. Now, so that is the entire thing. Yeah. Now, so these things, what we are doing is are some terminologies related to define the probability as we want to. Next, we have got an event. So sample spaces are the collection of all individual outcomes. Now, here I want you to put some more attention here. Sample space, probably you know all these things, right? Sample space, collection of all outcomes. Now, a subset of an a subset of the sample space. Just a second, let me write. Okay, sample space. Can you see my screen? Collection of all outcomes. This is sample space. Now, next is events, subset of the sample space. So that is what you know as an event, subset of a sample space. Now here I want to listen carefully that an event, I mean, we can write down like this: an event is any subset of a sample space which will be true, which will be a true case over here at this level. But this is not entirely true. We cannot consider any subset to be an event of a sample space. Now, those examples of subsets which cannot be considered as events are extremely pathological examples. Those examples do not really occur in the real world, but they do occur in the hypothetical mathematical world. So we need to consider them while we develop the theory. But we usually say event is any subset of the sample space. That is not exactly true. So if I write this one, event space, event space is not okay. Sample space we usually denote by uh, omega, right? We usually denote by omega, and event space is not uh, power set. What do I write? Mathcal P, no, math is CRP. I forgot SCRP. No. Anyway, let me write P only. It is not complete P omega. It is not P omega, but a subset uh, subset of it in the general case. In general case, event space is not P omega, but a subset of it. Okay, did you understand this part? So usually the experiments we see in front of our eyes, the actual experiments, what we do not, where we do not need to um, apply the mathematical delicacy, the imaginative delicacy to it, there it is the entire power set of omega. But in theory, there has to be some restrictions. Okay, that restriction is applied in such a way that for the non-delicate experiments, for the non-delicate sample spaces, the event space turns out to be power set of omega. Am I clear on this thing? Okay, fine. Uh, oh, sorry. Collection of all events. Why didn't you say so far? Collection of all events. So this has to be sort of a subset, a set of subsets of omega. Okay, fine. Yeah. So now, um, let me read. So the statistical regularity which we discussed the other day in some formal words. Uh, Statistics. So yeah, turn on captions. I guess things will be coming over here. Yeah. Can I do this thing like this? Yes. Okay. So I'm reading from the book some formal letters, formal words about statistical regularity, and that will help us in the transition to go to the definition of probability. Statistics deals with random experiments. The outcome of a random experiment may not be known for sure in advance. Unlike deterministic mathematics, like 2 plus 3 is equal to 5, thus we may think of randomness as irregularity. However, in certain situations, even outcomes of random experiments show a regularity that is similar to deterministic behavior. This is called statistical regularity. If the same random experiment is repeated independently for a large number of times, then certain aggregate behaviors of the outcomes often converge to a deterministic number. For example, if a coin is tossed n times, then the relative frequency of heads approaches a fixed number as n tends to infinity. Such regular behaviors can be proved using various theorems of probability. So this gives us the frequency definition of probability. Suppose that we have a random experiment with sample space S. Let A be a subset of sample space, be any event. Now let us repeat the random experiment n times independently. Let x sub n the relative equal to the relative frequency of the event during these trials. Then it is seen that as n tends to infinity, the random variable x n approaches some fixed number. This behavior is an example of statistical regularity. The limiting fixed number is called the probability of the event. This is called the frequency definition of probability. Fine. So now this is the statistical frequency definition of probability. Now this frequency definition of probability, as we saw the other day, is very much organic to come. Is very much the way probability was generated was I mean it emerged, got its inception. So in this way, so that is why statistical regularity, to explain statistical regularity, is one of the main objectives of probability. Now the problem is we have to, if we take this as our definition, that it goes to a certain number, that does not have any mathematical proof. We cannot say that a toss is we have tossed a coin, say, a billion number of times, and it has converged the ratio of heads to the number of tosses, that has converged to a particular number. We cannot say that another billion tosses will result in the same number. We need to prove these things mathematically. Otherwise, we cannot keep this as a mathematical definition. Limit n tending to infinity. First, with the very first thing we need to show is that limit exists. Otherwise, we cannot take this as a mathematical definition. So, for that we have to. For that we need to set this thing on the firm ground, the statistical regularity. So to prove statistical regularity, we cannot use the same definition by statistical regularity. Then it will be a circular loop of errors. Okay, we want to prove statistical regularity. We are defining the thing in terms of statistical regularity. So that is a fallacy, circular fallacy. So we need to define the probability in some other way so that we can prove statistical regularity. Remember, proving statistical regularity is one of the main objectives of probability. Okay, it took Bernoulli more than 25 years to develop this entire theory. Okay, and prove that statistical regularity is actually a true thing, a fact. So we have to define the probability in some other way so that we can prove statistical regularity. So for that, there are two more approaches. Number one is classical definition of probability. So probably you know what is the classical definition of probability, right? Yeah. So a random experiment has got only finitely many outcomes, equally likely outcomes, and In that way, the number of favorable outcomes divided by the number of total outcomes is the probability of an event. Now, there is no problem in that. The problem is this definition, though it is extremely simple. This definition, why do we learn classical definition of probability? Because that is extremely simple and at the same time extremely intuitive as well. But this has got some two serious drawbacks. Number one, it cannot work with infinite sample space, and number two, it has got that equally likely thing over there, and equally likely is basically equally probable. So we are actually again using the common sense of probability to define probability, and there is also this loop of error. So classical definition of probability is, that's why, is not an accepted definition of probability. Okay, but still, why do we learn it every time? Why do we start from it? Because that is very intuitive and simple to use. So next, we want to understand this thing. Our objective is to prove statistical regularity. So we cannot use the frequency definition of probability. Frequency definition of probability assumes statistical regularity, and that should not be the case while we want to prove statistical regularity mathematically. So in that effort, in that endeavor, we tried with classical definition of probability, and that failed miserably because of these two shortcomings. Number one is finite samples in sample space, and number two is the loop in the error loop in the definition in terms of equally likely outcomes. So what do? We went for what mathematicians usually do, went for axiomatic definition of probability. That is very good. What did they do? They made a few axioms. So let me write down the full definition over here. Can you see my screen? Axiomatic definition of probability. Fine. Okay. So let me write completely. Let if okay, I was using omega, so let me use that. Omega be a non-empty set, called the sample space. Okay, this is the sample space we are talking about. Sample space is the first thing we start our discussion in the probability. Let if yeah, this is the one. Let if be the set of all events, that is subsets of omega. Okay. If scriptive then a function p from f to double r, yeah, is called a probability function. It's called a probability function if it satisfies probability function if it satisfies the following. Number one is for all a in F, for all a in F, we must have probability of A is greater than or equal to 0. Number two, probability probability of the entire omega is 1. Number three, for any countable collection of pairwise disjoint events, uh, A1, A2, um, so on. From this if we have this thing, probability of where is this one? Integral. Let me hold here. Okay. Yes. Probability of n of kn is equal to sum under n probability of an. Okay, so this is the last one. So these are the three axioms of probability, the axiomatic definition of probability. So let omega be a non-empty set, that is called a sample space. Now let F be the set of all events, that is subsets of Q. Then a function from that event space to R is called a probability function if it satisfies the following: that for all event A, probability of the event is definitely non-negative, so it is greater than or equal to 0. Probability of the entire event, that is the of entire omega, is 1. And for any countable collection of pairwise disjoint events, so each of them are pairwise disjoint. A1 intersection A2 is phi, A1 intersection AN is phi, A2 intersection A10 is phi. So pairwise disjoint they are. So for any countable collection of pairwise disjoint events from the event space, we have probability of their union is translated as the sum of their individual probabilities. Okay, so this one is the most important one. Over here, here there are two limit processes involved. Number one is over here, that any collection of any countable collection of pairwise disjoint events. So there is a sense of convergence in the union of the subsets of omega over here, union of an, there is a sense of convergence over here. Okay, they are not nested or anything, so there is a sense of convergence over here, and there is another sense of convergence over here as well, that the probability is equal, the sum of the probabilities, this is an infinite series, and this is also convergent. So there are two sense of convergence assumed here. This is an extremely important thing on the in the axiomatic definition of probability. Now these two are quite simple to accept, but this is the I mean the most the pivoting axiom. So this is how mathematicians tackle a problem. If you do not have anything ready at your in your hand, then you come up with axioms can be which can be used to explain your intuition. Okay, so these three axioms can be used to explain any common sense you expect a probability, a study of probability to behave. Like a very nice example is given in this book. There is a this thing, a placard in the advertise in front of a coaching center. It says that over here the chance of success, I mean chance of passing the examination is 70%, and chance of getting a first class is 80%. So obviously this cannot be true. Okay, uh, uh, because to get first class, at least you need to pass. So the probability of getting a first class can never be greater than the probability of passing the examination. So these common sense must be retained, must be satisfied by these axioms of probability. So this three axioms of probability are basically our mathematical approach. So this one does not involve um, any things like that. So we have taken our cues from the classical definition of probability and have curated this one. The last one is basically motivated from the classical definition of probability, and we have extended for infinitely many number of events. So that we can overcome the problem faced by the limited I mean the finite outcome over there, finite sample space over there. So this is something accepted thing, and for I mean any common sense fact what we expect probability to behave like, that is there, that is satisfied there, those things satisfied there by this sets of axioms of probability. So this is what is called axiomatic definition of probability. In the next class, we will see how these axioms actually helps us help us to I mean take carry out the everyday probability problems. Okay. Any questions? Yeah, tell me. Hmm. 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 Yes. Yes. those are basically non-measurable events. I did not tell you because you do not know what a measurable set is. So those are basically non-measurable measurable sets. Um, you can search this thing, Banach-Tarski paradox. Banach-Tarski paradox, or basically this has been proved. So this is actually a theorem. Okay, so Banach-Tarski paradox says, yeah. So you can take a what do I say? Uh, ball, solid ball of say volume 1, and uh, uh, break it into pieces, break it into 5 pieces. Okay, I mean, not break it, say, yeah, break it into 5 pieces carefully, of course, and rejoin those 5 pieces. Why rejoin is not a word? Rejoin those 5 pieces and get two, let me write, two solid balls of the same size. So you can actually double the size of the balls over there. So now think of this one. If you have a gold ball, okay, solid gold ball, and you can actually do this trick, then what will you become? This is actually possible. You can actually take a solid ball of volume, say 1, and break it into 5 pieces and rejoin those 5 pieces to get two solid balls of the same size, of the same volume. Let me write. So this is possible. Now the point is, these 5 pieces are hypothetical pieces. You cannot break them in this particular 5 pieces in the real world, but in mathematically you can definitely do that. These pieces are non-measurable sets, non-measurable pieces. The measure is the theory of, is the study of uh, measuring something, measuring length, measuring volume, measuring area, measuring anything. So that is the measure theory. And the measure theory, of course, the measure theory must have the axiom, like these axioms are there in the definition of measure theory. It must be true that probability of A union B, sorry, measure of A union B must be measure A plus measure B, provided A and B are non-empty, disjoint. So that must be there in the measure theory definition. So that is there. But when we do want to keep all these things together, the definitions of measure theory, we see that we cannot define measures for every subset of a sample space. So there are some subsets for which the measure is undefined. Those are called non-measurable sets. And these 5 pieces are, I guess, 2 or 3 of them are non-measurable pieces. So they can act weirdly. They can act weirdly. So these 5 pieces, uh, I mean, they do all these two solid balls of the same volume. You cannot do that in the real world. You cannot make that break. You cannot cut that volume into two solid. Into that particular piece, so that you can join them to do be the same volume, twice the volume. So now, how does this measure theory come into picture? I mean postgraduate level, if you learn probability, then you will see that probability is nothing but a measure on the sample space. Okay, so for that sample space, now since probability is a measure, it does not have it does not have uh, it does not have the what do I say, independence, not independence, it does not have the um, mm, advantage to include every subset of that as an event, because if event, we call those as events for which we can calculate the probability, that means for which we can calculate the measure, since probability is a measure. So for those non-measurable events, we have to we need to keep them outside of the event space. Okay,